All right, we are live. Welcome, everyone. My name is Dayana Mayfield, and I'm the head of content at Design Files. I'm back with another live event. Every month, we love to feature the people of Design Files, pro interior designers, and experts in running a design or creative business. We discuss the current challenges you're facing and no BS lessons to help you streamline and grow your business. Today, I'm really excited because we have an amazing guest. Kate Bendewald, the founder and CEO of Designers Oasis, an online coaching and community resource for interior designers. She has run a thriving interior design business over the last decade. Kate Bendewald Interior Design is a boutique residential interior design studio in Denver, Colorado, helping clients with full home renovations, kitchen and bath design, as well as offering a designer for a day service. In 2019, she started Designers Oasis to help fellow interior designers. Kate doesn't believe in a one-size-fits-all approach, which I love, and has made it her mission to help interior designers like you build a profitable business with ease. So welcome, Kate, and welcome to everyone joining us. How are you doing today, Kate?
Oh my gosh, I'm thrilled to be here. Thank
Yay!
you. Thank you so much for having me. I love this community of interior designers, so I'm always thrilled when we get to spend some time and hang out together.
Yes, absolutely. So before we dive all into auditing projects and, managing our time, I wanted to ask you, I noticed that you talk a lot about rest and ease on your social media content. I feel like this is a very hot topic, especially among female business owners. So I wanted to kind of ask you, how has focusing on rest impacted your business?
Yeah, I love to talk about this. I have thoroughly both feet in the anti-hustle movement.
Yeah.
And that's because I have learned the hard way what that does to someone. It's
Mhm.
not sustainable, and it's not
Yeah.
sustainable as a business owner. And I think, especially, I know we probably have a diverse audience here, but I'm sure there's a lot of women in here. And we tend to be caretakers, whether that's taking care of children or working in our community or helping aging parents. And so we often are wearing a lot of hats besides a business owner. And I know that we strive to be people pleasers and want to do our best. I am a recovering perfectionist,
Yes.
and all of that leads to burnout. And so I'll just share my own story because a lot of
Yeah.
designers have told me inside our Designers Oasis community that they've had a similar experience. So my background is in corporate architecture. I did interior design at Oz Architecture. And then in 13, I had my first baby, and I was loving life. I was thrilled to go back to work. I loved my job and I was looking forward to it. But um, I could not handle I was terribly sleep deprived.
Yeah.
I couldn't handle the very long, grueling hours of that corporate environment. And so I ended up deciding to go work for myself. That's a very abbreviated version of this story, because I was totally burned out in that corporate environment. I had some success as a designer pretty quickly. Things grew. I was making money and I was saying yes. I was eager, saying yes to everything. And I eventually found myself right back in that place where I was before, working in
Yeah.
corporate. And I was just like, I am miserable. This is not why I quit my day job, was to just like
Right.
put my baby to bed and then just go straight back to work. And I had just let myself completely burn out. And so I had this opportunity. My husband actually had this job opportunity out of state, and we ended up taking it. But that gave me the opportunity to just kind of like pause and recalibrate. And so I took that time to take the organizational skills that I learned in the corporate architecture. Everything's very well organized because you're working on large teams, huge projects, and was able to implement that into my own, small interior design business. And so now I kind of take what I have put together, and I teach it to other designers to help, figure out your profitability to be the most profitable that you can be without burnout.
Yeah.
Figure out what kind of services are going to work the best for your personality, for your audience, the kind of work you want to be doing. And I realized, I have so many designers right now in Designers Oasis that they come from such a diverse background, and some are here because they are eager, they are ramping up, they want more projects. I have other designers who are like, I just want to coast and I want to figure out how to make this a little bit easier, right? And so
Yeah.
I like to serve both of those audiences because we go through seasons, right? I've definitely been in
Yes.
seasons where I was, really eager and ambitious, and other seasons where I'm like, I just need to coast for a little bit. So yeah, it's because of my own burnout. And so now I've sort of, painfully figured out a way to bring a lot more balance into my work. So
Yes.
that's the long version, I guess.
That is a beautiful, beautiful kind of segue, because it puts, it frames this conversation in a really important light, right? Where we're, managing our time, protecting our time, being strategic with our time. And sometimes there's times where we want to, grow and scale. And sometimes like we need to coast, and that is totally fine. And I think accepting that is honestly like a huge secret to success, right? Instead of constantly pushing yourself, but accepting that is major. So let's dive in now that we have like all of this meaning behind the math that we're
Yeah.
about to do. Let's talk about, why is it important to make the time to audit your projects specifically? Like, why should we do this math?
Yes. I think this is a really important. I always like to start conversations with why. Why is this important? Um, and I just want to say to the folks listening, I did not have any business experience prior to starting my own business. It has all been trial and error. I didn't even know what a chart of accounts was when I first started my business. So trust me, if I can do it, I know you can do it. I am not a math whiz. I rely on spreadsheets and calculators to help me figure this out.
Yeah.
And so I'm hoping to just make the information that I'm sharing with you guys today as approachable as possible. And at first you may look at it and be like, whoa, Kate, I don't have an MBA. I just want you to know I don't either.
Yeah.
And so we'll kind of go through it step by step so that hopefully on the other side of it, it's really crystal clear and feels approachable. So there are really three reasons why, and I'm going to just move my screen a little bit because I have them written down here and I want to make sure I don't forget any. So there's really three reasons why you might want to audit your project. And the first one is pretty obvious. It's to understand your profitability, not just in dollars and cents, right? It's kind of arbitrary to know, okay, we made $14,000 on that project or $20,000 on that project. Well, that's great. But what is that? How is that relevant in terms of a percentage of the overall project? And so I think understanding your profitability in a percentage is also a really insightful number to know. And
Yeah.
number two is it gives you something to compare. So once you have audited a couple of projects, then you can start to compare project to project, right? Or different types of projects. So kitchen and bath projects may look a little different than your furnishings projects or major renovations. And so you can kind of compare different project types. And the other thing you can compare are services. I have a lot of designers who kind of go back and forth with wanting to do full service and be all in and do all of the purchasing and ordering and turnkey. And that's great. And then sometimes they're like, I need a break. I just want to do design only and pass off a package, or designers who just want to do virtual design, e-design, which is kind of how I got my start teaching in Designers Oasis. So it gives you the ability to compare not only different project types, but different service types. And that may inform some decision making for you in your business. And then the third thing is it provides you with a baseline. So let's say that you audit a couple of projects that you did this year, and you finally get that number, that percentage, and you say, gosh, this is a lot lower than I thought. We're not going to beat ourselves up over it. We're going for progress, not perfection here. And so let's say you're, hovering around 20 or 30% profitability. You can say, okay, our goal for every project this year is to never dip below 40%. And so that gives you just something to work towards and to start working towards. The other thing it can give you a baseline for is looking at your efficiency on projects. So let's say that you, and this is regardless of how you charge, whether you, I'm a big fan of hybrid. I teach the hybrid format of charging,
Okay.
but flat fee or hourly, doesn't matter how you charge. You have to understand your hours. You have to understand, based on this proposal, we're budgeting, let's say 100 hours for a project. And at the end of a project, when you go back and you audit it, you can say, holy smokes, it takes so much more time to do these drawings or to do these the specifications than we realized. The next opportunity we get to do a proposal, we really need to be more realistic about how much time it
Mhm.
takes,
Yeah.
or find opportunities for efficiency. Maybe it
Right.
means we need to outsource some of this stuff to somebody who is more proficient at it. Or maybe you need to just start charging more. So 3 things: understand your profitability, giving you something to compare, and 3, providing you with a baseline from which to work.
Huge, all huge levers, right?
Yeah.
To move in your business, to actually like, map a change that you're wanting to make,
Yeah.
measure it, all of that good stuff. So, do you audit all of your projects, or do you just pick certain ones to audit, like on a quarterly basis? How does that look?
Sure. I audit all of our projects, the exception being Designer for a Day. That's a pretty straightforward. It's a 6-hour day service, so there's not a whole lot to audit there. But every other project does get audited, because, back to my number 2 reason, that's going to give you something to compare. It's going to allow you the ability to compare different project types and different services. We were able, after auditing a number of projects, to determine that we're incredibly profitable in kitchen and bath projects, because a lot of it is, we are able to pass off a lot of the project management to our contractor, and then we get to move on to some other projects. This is just for us, right? This could be a different scenario for somebody else. So our furnishings projects, we do a lot of what we call white box projects. It's like somebody moves into a brand new white space, but it has zero personality. So we're doing lighting, wallpaper, millwork, of course, furnishings, window treatments, all that. We're actually pretty profitable on those too, but they take so much more time. But they're a lot of fun for us, and that really gets kind of the most creative juices flowing. So we like those projects, but we just kind of know those projects are slightly less profitable. But at the end of the day, we're in it because we want to be creative people. We like doing
Yeah.
that kind of work, and we're not going to turn it down because of that. It's
Yeah.
just something that we were able to assess once auditing a couple of projects.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because like your enjoyment can kind of give you more energy, which can, impact like the rest of
Yeah.
your day and the rest of your projects. So it's a good point that maybe something's a little less profitable, but if the enjoyment factor is really high and the creativity factor is really high, it's not necessarily a bad thing, as long as it's not like, unprofitable, right?
Right. No, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. So, we're going to dive into the, process for auditing your projects, how you actually do it. I know that you have some materials prepared to share with us, and I want to remind everybody that we are going to have time for Q&A. So if you see something on the screen and you're still a little confused about it, go ahead and drop a question in the chat, because we will be getting into some clarifying questions later on. Kate, do you have I'm going to add your screen to the stream. So do
Yeah.
you have let's see, I'm seeing it now.
Can
Okay,
you see
here we
that?
go. I think everybody should be able to see.
Okay.
Let us know if you can see the auditing your projects 4-step process on your screen. It does kind of take a while for comments to come through. So I'm assuming we're good. So you can dive into it.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. So, and I just want to mention, we do have a freebie that we're going to pass out, or you're going to be able to get through Design Files. And there is one piece of this, step 4, that's not included on that. So feel free to take a screenshot. It's actually the simplest piece of it, but I'm gonna go through all of it and make sure you guys have it all clear in your head. So, okay, auditing your projects is a 4-step process. Step number 1 is to understand your human resources cost. So this is your people. This is all of your services. So this is your cost to be in business, plus what it costs you for any of your employees or contractors that might be working with you. Step number 2 is to understand your project time. You cannot audit a project effectively if you're not tracking your time. And I'm just going to pause here to stand on my little soapbox. If you're not tracking your time, you are a hobbyist. You have to track your time no matter what kind of project, whether it's flat fee, hybrid, or hourly. You have to track your time to understand your profitability. I know that Design Files has a feature that you guys can use. I use Harvest, which I really like because it gives you kind of deep data. I don't care if it's a spreadsheet, just somehow we need to be making sure that you're tracking your time. And it doesn't have to be painful, but it is incredibly important to understanding your profitability. So understanding your project time. Step number 3, I'm going to off my soapbox now. Step number 3 is to understand your project time cost. So we're going to take the information that we learned in step number 1 and step number 2 and put it together to understand our project time cost. And step number 4 is to understand your product sales and cost. So if you are doing design only or e-design and you're not purchasing or ordering product for your client, you can stop at step 3. That's as far as you need to go. If, on the other hand, you are ordering and purchasing product on behalf of your client, you're going to want to continue to step 4. And then altogether, this is going to kind of give you your bottom line. Okay, so to start, I think it's really important to understand the terminology and the definitions of these different factors. So step number 1, understanding your human resources cost. First, you want to understand your cost per hour. I call this YCPH. So this is what it costs you to pay yourself. This is your take-home pay divided by the number of hours you want to work annually. Don't worry, I'm going to show you an example here in a minute. This is not your billable rate, okay? This is just your cost to do business just for you. And then the second one is your staff cost per hour, and you're going to want to do this for each person that works for you. So what it costs you to pay your staff, and this is going to help you understand your true cost, okay? So what you pay someone hourly, even if they're a salary worker, you're going to back that in and figure out what their hourly rate would be, plus any cost to employ them. So maybe you pay for software, maybe you are paying for insurance or any other cost associated with employing someone. You're going to want to figure that out as well. And I'm going to give you that here in a minute. And that's going to give you your true cost per hour. Whoops, did I skip one? No. Sorry, guys. Oh, yeah. So little note, these numbers pretty much stay the same, but they need to be reviewed annually. So once you figure this out, you can kind of hang on to those numbers and use them project after project, but you do want to check them out at least once a year and just make sure that if you need to make some adjustments, that you're doing that. Okay, so here's an example of how to calculate your cost per hour. Let's take your base salary, right? Because you guys are all paying yourselves, right? Yes, you are. You are regularly sending that money to your personal account. Let's say you have dedicated a base salary of $60,000 a year. You want to figure out your desired weeks per year to work. Let's say in this case, it's 40 divided by 60,000 is $1,500 a week. And your desired hours per week to work, say, is 30. So then you take 30 divided by 1,500, and that gives you $50 an hour. So that's your cost per hour just to pay yourself. Of course, you have overhead expenses to run your business. This is why you don't charge your clients $50 an hour. You're going to triple, if not quadruple, that figure to get your billable rate. Similar process for understanding your staff cost per hour. First, you want to understand their hourly pay. Let's say you pay them $30 an hour. They average 20 hours a week times 4 weeks, 80 hours a month. So now you know that they're working an average of 80 hours per month. And then any additional expenses. Let's say that you added up your expenses for that employee and you spend about $200 a month to employ them. When you divide that $200 a month, $200 a month divided by the 80 hours per month that they work, you come to about $2.50. So you'd want to add that to their cost per hour. So it costs you $32.50 per hour for that employee. Again, this is not your billable rate to your clients. You're going to take that number and triple, if not quadruple it. All right, Diana, can you hear me?
Yeah, it did pause for a second.
Okay.
I hear you now.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
All right. So I just was wrapping that up, that in this example that I'm using, your staff cost per hour for that employee would be $32.50 per hour. Okay. So step number 2 is to understand your project time, because we're all tracking our time on projects, right? And I'm just going to say, guys, if you want to audit a project, but you're like, gosh, Kate, we were really half-assed it on tracking our hours, pardon my language. Do your best. Just figure out what you think you spent on the project, and make a commitment to start tracking your time a little bit better moving forward. I'd rather you kind of ballpark it and have something to work off of than to not be doing this at all. So again, we can ballpark some of these things to get down to the bottom line. Okay. Understanding your project time. First, we have TH, which is total hours per staff member spent on the project, regardless if the time was billable or not. So you need this number for each team member. Let's say that you had 100, your employee spent 100 hours on a project, and 8 of those were not billable. You still want to include that, all of those non-billable hours as well when it comes down to calculating your profitability. And then total time cost, TTC, is for each team member, you want to take their staff cost per hour and multiply it by their total hours contributed towards the project. I think that's pretty straightforward. And then you're also going to want to know your total design fees charged to a project. I have a spreadsheet. I'm going to show this to you in an example, and it might make a little bit more sense. So if you're feeling a little lost right now, stick with me, hang with me, because I promise it's all going to come together at the end. Right now, I'm just simply defining these terms for you so you understand what is TDF, what is TTC, and so on and so forth. So stick with me. Okay, step number 3, this is really your formulas. So once you've got this information together, you're going to do a little bit of math. This is something you can very simply and easily put it into a calculator. This calculator is a part of our membership that our members pay for. So that's why I can't share it, but I'm going to give you the formulas, and you can do this for yourself as well. Okay, so total time cost is, you're going to take your cost per hour times all the hours that you contributed towards the project. You can do the same thing for your staff cost per hour, and you're going to add that up, and that's your total time cost. Your net profit is your total design fees minus your total time cost. And then if you divide those numbers, you get your profitability. All right. I know I'm skimming over that. That's because I think it's going to make a little bit more sense once we get into the calculator. Okay. And then if you are selling product to your clients, you would want to also do this step. I just want to go back and mention that this is your profitability for HR only, human resources. So this is just looking at your service fees, what you charge your client for services, and your human resources cost. And in step 4, this is where we get into product sales. So you're going to take your total gross product sales. So everything that your client paid you for product, and you're going to subtract what you spent on all of your purchase orders, which using DesignFiles should be very simple to pull that information. You're also going to want to subtract project expenses. So some examples of project expenses might be if you bought client gifts. Let's say you made a mistake on something and you needed to pay to have it fixed. Obviously, you're not going to charge your client for that, but you want to account for it at the project level. Let's say photography. Maybe you want to, factor that into your project expenses as well. So you would subtract your project expenses, and that's going to give you your net profitability on product. And that's going to be a dollar figure, right? If you take that and you divide it by your total gross product sales, that percentage is going to give you your profitability. A quick note about taxes. You can do this a couple of ways. I think the easiest way is if you include tax on your total gross product sales calculation, you're going to also include what you spent on tax through any purchase orders. It should cancel itself out. But either way, you either take it out or leave it in on both of those numbers, and it should balance out. Okay, so now I want to just switch screens here for a second. Can you guys see this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm going to show you how to do this in a calculator. You can do this for yourself if you want, but we have those same steps. We have an example I used, $50 an hour was your cost per hour. Your staff cost per hour was $32.50. If you have additional staff, you would want to include them here. Then you're going to want to input your project time. Let's say, and I'm going to start this out at 50 hours. So let's say that you contributed 50 hours towards this project and your design assistant contributed 100 hours towards the project. What is going to happen is it's going to take this information and multiply it by this, and it's going to give you your project time cost. So you just want to, it's that simple. You just want to take your cost per hour times how many hours you contributed on the project. And in this calculation, it gives us $2,500 and our staff was $32.50. That's taking $32.50 real cost per hour times their $100 an hour. Okay, so that gives us our individual project time cost, and then it adds it up here. Next, you want to figure out your profitability in terms of a percentage. And the way that you do that is you're going to take your total design fees, what you charge the client in this example. And I was playing around with this a little earlier just to compare some things. But let's say you charged your client $15,000 for a design, and then you would this number subtracts your total design fees. I'm going to back up. This number is essentially taking your total design fees and subtracting your total time cost. Okay, so you just want to take your total design fees and subtract your total time cost. And in this calculation, this is what it's coming up with, $92.50. So you made $9,000 on this project. Pretty good, right? Well, let's just look at that in terms of a percentage. That's at about 62%. And I would say that is excellent. If it's closer to 40 or 50, that's also really good. And I think that's, something worth celebrating. Even if you dropped it down to 10,000, you're still in that really good range, but that could give you something to work towards. Diana, do you have any questions right now before I go into this last step? Or
no, this is making sense. I mean, this is calculating the profit on the human resources, on the labor.
Yep.
And then I'm guessing, now we've got to add the products, right? To get the more accurate.
Yeah. So, this is really just looking at your labor and your human resources. So next, if you are ordering for your clients, you're going to want to do this next step. So in this case, and this is the part that's not included on the PDF download, but it's also the simplest. So it's real easy. It's like, what did your clients pay you for product and how much money did you actually spend? And what's the difference? Okay. So in this example, I'm saying, total gross product sales. This client in this case paid you $100,000 for product, and your purchase orders added up to around $80,000. This is your total dollar amount spent on product. This is your net designer pricing. Total expenses not invoiced. So the examples I gave earlier were gifts, paying for errors or mistakes or omissions, or photography, which is optional. Some designers choose to put photography kind of in that category of marketing, and that's fine too. I think it's nice to build that into your project fees at the outset. And then that's going to give you your net profit on product. And I like looking at those numbers a little bit differently, looking at human resources and product a little bit differently. And then that's going to give you, if you divide your net profit with your gross product sales, that's going to give you a percentage. And in this example, it's around 18%. You could choose a business model where you have, maybe your design fees are super competitive, but you are aggressively selling and leaning on to the trade vendors, and you're making a ton more money in product sales than it may be another designer. Whereas another designer, let's say kitchen and bath, they're getting charged, they're going to charge heavily for their design fees, their intellectual property and creativity and expertise, but they're not making as much money on product sales. That's something that you can play with based on different project types and services. So just something
Very
to think about.
smart. Yeah, I love that.
And then in this case, it just kind of, you can add these together. If you take your total sales and services and you add them together, and if you take your total project profits and you add those together, you can calculate your percentage profitability. You can collate that information, right? So you can figure out, okay, taking my profitability from my services and my profitability from my product, where do we land? What's that bottom line number? And that's this number right here, which is at 20%, which I would say is good. Another kind of interesting number that once you have this, you can figure out is your total revenue per hour. Just kind of an interesting number to look at and to see. I'm going to just quickly make an adjustment and show you how little tweaks can change things. Let's say that in this example, you were really utilizing more retail vendors. Maybe you were getting a small discount, 20% or something like that. But on the next project, you were heavily leaning on your to the trade vendors and getting much better pricing on things. So let's just drop that to, let's say 60,000 is what you spent. All of a sudden, that profitability jumps up to 38% here, a significant increase. So just something interesting for you to consider. So I know this replay will be available. I know that this is a lot of information to absorb kind of in one step, but the PDF is going to have all of these formulas for you. And then this is something that you can calculate in a spreadsheet if you want, or next time we open the membership up, you can join and grab yours. But I don't want you to have to wait for that. This is something that you could start doing today with these formulas. So that's it for the formulas. I kind of know your next question, but I'm going to let you dive into it.
I love how it was also like color coded. That'll be really helpful too. And
I think
yes, and this Facebook video is inside of an event page, and at the top of that event page, I've already dropped a link to the PDF cheat sheet. So, feel free to like download that as we're kind of like chatting. But yeah, you guys are going to have the replay. You're going to have that PDF cheat sheet. It's obviously something you need to take some time and, look at and play around with. But let's talk about, what can designers do once they have these calculations? Like, what is kind of like just some examples, right? You gave the example of, maybe if they're doing a lot of renovations, they're going to make sure they're more profitable on the staff costs. Like, what are some more examples, maybe things that you've worked with designers on in the past in Designers Oasis, where once they figured out this calculation, kind of help them transform something, just some like practical application examples that you can think of?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's the beauty of numbers. Numbers tell a story, and we're all wired for story. So don't be afraid of numbers. This is not super complicated math here. So anybody should be able to do this, but numbers tell a story. And so they can help you to make decisions. So I did put together 3 ways that you can really take this information and, maybe you do that first audit and you're like, whew, this is not great, right? Don't beat yourself up over it. Now you have information and now you can improve. And now you mentioned levers earlier. Now you can start thinking about what are some of those other levers that I can do to increase my percentage, and what can my goals be. And how do I have conversations with my team and my staff
Mhm.
and get their buy-in and their accountability on some of this? So a couple of ways: know your numbers. Okay, so this sounds probably super vague. Like, okay, what numbers do we need to know? There's a couple of numbers you need to know. I just shared some of them with you. Your cost per hour, you need to know that. You need to know your staff's true cost per hour. You need to know your time and how many hours you're contributing towards a project. The other really important thing I think is important to point out here, uh, when I worked at the architecture firm, there were project budgets and time budgets, but that information was never shared with us. So I would just work on projects and, and then one day they'd be like, hey, how are we doing on this? I'm like, well, we still need to do X, Y, and Z. They're like, well, we're at time for this project. And I was like, nobody ever shared this information with me. So once I started to ask, what is our budgeted time for this project? I was more conscientious and cognizant of my budgeted number of hours. So if you create a proposal for a client and it should be based on an estimated amount of time and number of hours. Let's say you've allocated 100 hours towards a project. 25 of them are hours that you would be working, and 75 of them are hours that your design assistant might be working on them. She needs to know she has 75 hours to work on this project and how to divvy it up. Maybe half of that is for concept design and half of it is for design development. So then you can at your weekly meetings, be checking in and say, how are we tracking on this project? How are our numbers looking? And it can keep you from going down rabbit holes a lot of times. I want you to give yourself enough time to do high quality design work, right? That's the best case scenario. I don't want you to feel like you're always in a rush to get something done. But getting your team on board and making sure they know what their budgeted hours are for a project, how that might be broken down, and how they can see how they're tracking on a project is going to give them some accountability for their own work and keep everybody on track.
Yeah.
Number 2 is raise your rates. So if you do these exercises and you realize, gosh, I'm not charging enough for our work because it just takes longer to do these drawings or to do these specifications. The next time you're putting together a proposal, it's going to be based on facts, on data, on information. This is just how long it takes, right? So that's another approach, is to either raise your hourly rate of what you charge, and or put together proposals that are based on reality.
Yeah.
And then number 3 is to start using trade vendors. So if I hear from a lot of designers, especially new designers, and it's totally understandable. Like, they're just unsure how the whole trade vendor thing works and if they're eligible and how to get started and all that stuff. It's really a lot easier than you might think. But utilizing trade vendors where you can get better pricing is going to heavily affect your overall bottom line. So I hope that helps. Those are kind of my three tips for increasing your profits once you kind of know where you are with these baselines.
Love it. Love it. And we do have on the blog a blog post called 8 Interior Design Resources for High Profit Margin Products. So if anybody is looking for like some more trade vendor resources, make sure to check that out. Yes, these make tons of sense. Kate, is there anything else that you wanted to say before we dive into Q&A?
Oh gosh. No, I don't. I want designers to feel like this is approachable. It might feel a little sticky the first time, but just know that it gets easier, and you're going to feel so much better knowing that information on the other side of it, and it's going to give you some goals to work towards.
Yes, absolutely. So let us see what we have here. Okay, so we're getting some questions about the link. I did drop the project time audit cheat sheet in the chat, so make sure to grab that there. We're getting some thank yous. Thank you, Kate. Super helpful, super detailed. So somebody's asking, where is markup in these calculations? Where are we putting markup in there?
Yeah, so I'm gonna actually share my screen
Yeah.
again because I think that would be the most effective way to share that. Share screen, share screen. Okay, so actually, oh, did I close
Do it
mine?
again.
Okay, here, let's just go here. So the difference between your markup, the difference between that is between what you spend on purchase orders and what your clients are paying you. So, if your purchase orders, let's say on one product, or one order is your cost is $500, but your cost to your client was $1,000, the difference there is your markup. So that's how it's
Right.
calculated.
Right. You're not like putting the markup in, you're putting your cost for goods and then you're putting what you charge your client. And so it's going in that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, let me see. Okay, and we had covered this at the beginning about how often you audit projects, but you audit every project. But what is your process like? Do you do that at the end of the month? Do you do that at the end of the project? Do you have like a calculator for each project and you're adding things as you go along? How do you do that?
Yeah. Oh, I like this question. Um, Typically it's quarterly.
Mhm.
Yeah. Sometimes if I'm eager to know, like, ooh, where did that land? Like we're getting ready to wrap up. I mean, it is the end of the quarter now, but we're getting ready to deliver kind of the last things on some projects. And I won't wait till next quarter. I'm gonna want to know. But I am an advocate for quarterly CEO days where you lock yourself in a room and you wrap your head around where things are with your business and no distractions. And so that would generally be about the time that we would look at our past projects.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Somebody's saying they're having a problem opening the link to the cheat sheet in their PDF. So maybe just email back. Maybe Kate has a support email. I was able to get into it, so it might just be a little computer glitch. Maybe try again later or contact her support because it
Yeah.
should be
If you
working.
guys have any issues at all or any questions, email us at support@designersoasis.com and we will happily make sure that you get access to these tools. We want to, that's the idea. We want to make sure you have the tools you need to be able to make this work for you.
Yeah, makes sense. So back to that quarterly CEO day.
Mhm.
I love that. So that's something that you're doing at this time. You're reviewing your profitability for each project. Just out of curiosity, what other kinds of things would you do on your quarterly CEO day?
Oh, yes, I love this question. First, it starts with I treat myself to a big Starbucks drink. All the meetings or there's no meetings, no phone calls, no nothing. I like to get in the little zone, right? But we're looking at project profitability. We're looking at the status of projects, just saying like, okay, how are we tracking? I think everybody knows right now that projects are just taking longer because the supply chain issues continue to be a challenge. So we have a project calendar that I share with the members, but it's another spreadsheet. It's just showing like, what do we have room for in terms of taking on, what's our capacity for taking on new projects, and making sure that we're making space for that. Following up with past clients who have maybe need to follow up, any of those big business development moves we can make. But just looking at our numbers and looking 100 yards ahead at where are we going and what do we have capacity for, and that sort of thing. Also too, we might be like refining a process or saying like, okay, I use Dubsado for my client onboarding process.
Mhm.
And, we've used a CEO day to go in there and just tweak and refine that so that everything is truly automated, relieving us of a lot of back and forth emailing that's robbing us of our creative time. Um, to make sure that's working properly. But really, the idea is to just dig in and work on your business. It could look different no matter where you are in business. Instead of working on client work, client work is important. It gets us paid. It gets the projects done. But you can't do that at the expense of not taking care of your business, so that it's profitable and sustainable and healthy for you. In the long run.
Yeah, so important to schedule that in and obviously to make it fun, clear your calendar. I think that would be that. Yeah, that's a fabulous idea. So, and I'm guessing when you track your time, like how are you tracking your time on the road? Are you using like a mobile app?
Yeah, I use Harvest. I have used it since day one in my business. Coming from the corporate architecture world, we were expected to track our time to the sixth minute, which was a little bit painstaking, but it's just a habit that I got into. And if
Yeah.
anybody's read James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, if time tracking is not a habit that you're in, I recommend finding a way to build that habit and strengthen it, because doing so is going to give you so much information.
Yes.
You don't have to track your time to the sixth minute, people, but just track it to some level of accuracy. I like Harvest because Harvest gives you this visual landscape, and I'm not going to tell you guys that there's one right way to track your time.
Yeah.
Whatever tool that you will actually use, that's the right tool to use. So, but Harvest does give you, you put in a budgeted number of hours, right? You're like, okay, I have this many hours for this phase, this many hours for this phase. And then every time you open it up, there's this dashboard and it says, okay, this project is on track. This project is over on hours or under. Guess what, guys? If you are charging flat fee for design, I'm a big proponent of hybrid, where you charge a flat fee for design, all the way up through the design presentation, and then hourly for implementation after that, because there's a lot more unknowns, a lot of things that are out of your hands that you can't control, and it's harder to predict. So that's what I feel has worked best for us. But if you come in under hours, great, you pocket that money and you get to keep it, and it goes back into your business. So all that to say that, you can celebrate when you come in under hours.
Yeah.
But they do have a mobile app. It tracks, we put in our mileage and it tracks it there. I like it because it has a little timer on the desktop version. So
Mhm.
if I like pause and run in, and my husband works from home and we ended up having a 20-minute conversation in the kitchen or whatever, I come back out, it'll say, hey, we noticed you were idle for the last 20 minutes. How do you want to spend this time? Do you want to delete it, or add it to the project or whatever? Maybe I wasn't talking to my husband. Maybe I was over here at the table putting a scheme together. So I like that it kind of helps you stay on track. It also sends out email alerts that you can set up on a schedule, whether you want that daily or weekly, to remind you, hey, put in your hours for these projects. So that's also super helpful.
Cool. Yeah, I love the budget idea. As you guys know, we have a time tracker inside Design Files. We're always looking to like improve our features. So maybe
Yeah.
that like budget thing could be a cool add-on.
Yeah, you guys are so good at adding features that
I know,
are
right?
good. Yeah.
I know. They're Energizer bunnies over here. That listen, that's the best part, right? Listening to
Yeah.
your customers. That's what it's all about. Let's see. In a general redecor project, what have you experienced as the amount of hours after the design phase?
Oh, I wish I had a good answer for
Yeah.
that. It's really difficult to say with any level of accuracy. Every project is different. Designer skill levels are different.
Mhm.
The more experience you get, the more efficient you're going to get, the more tools you're going to have in your toolkit to, check stuff off. Nowadays, if we get an item, just yesterday, we had an item arrived at our receiver that was damaged, I can forward that email to my assistant, and she knows exactly what to do, what to say, what phone call to make. Whereas years ago, I'd have been like, oh crap, what do I do? The sky is falling. you know
Yeah.
so it's just one of these things that you get more efficient over time. And also having a junior designer or an assistant that is at a lower a billable rate to help you with those kind of things really
Right.
makes it a lot more palatable to your clients. Your clients don't want to pay you $150, $200 an hour to go figure out a thing that didn't show up or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
having an assistant that, where they're paying them $75 an hour for that turnkey experience is a lot more palatable for your clients, and it
Mhm.
frees you up to be doing things like business development or working on a new scheme that you've got, a new, concept design for a new client. So I'm a big proponent of, outsourcing that to an assistant, that kind of stuff, to an assistant at a lower price point.
That makes a lot of sense. That's an excellent kind of motivation if somebody's feeling like they're in that spot where they haven't gotten an assistant yet. That's kind of like also a selling point for clients. That makes a lot of sense. And we've talked a bit about the hybrid business model. I think we all have an understanding of what that means, but just so that we're not operating on assumptions, what does the hybrid pricing model look like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to address this. So the hybrid model is charging your clients a flat fee for design, all the way up through the design presentation. And we include one round of revisions with that. Up to a certain number of hours is usually how we cap that. And then implementation, which is all of the ordering, purchasing, tracking, meeting with a contractor, site visits, handling discrepancies, handling damages. All of that is done hourly. And you can do it a couple of ways. You can either, in terms of billing, we typically will charge upfront for design. So we break it out into concept design as one fee and design development as a second fee. You can either ask for all of that upfront at the beginning of a project, which I would probably do for a smaller project. For a bigger project, you might say, we would like to accept concept, the flat fee design fee for concept design to begin your project. The next payment will be due at the end of concept design in order for us to start the next phase, design development, right? So you can either break it out that way. And then with the hourly, you can do it two different ways as well. You can either ask for a retainer up front, say we want to take a retainer for 40 hours, let's say as an example, and we'll go through that. And then if we need more, we'll come back for more. So you get that payment up front. If you have a really good trusting relationship with your client and there's accountability there, we historically will bill retroactively at the end of the month for the exact hours that we use. And then it's easy too, because we also invoice for any reimbursable mileage at that time. So we can add that in. We also send clients their invoices for warehousing and receiving at that same time. So that's kind of a monthly thing that we do. And we just do it first Friday of the new month. So does that
that makes
clear?
sense. So for the reimbursable mileage, that's like you're putting in your contract that you have a fee for the driving. Like, is that like how do you charge per mile?
60 cents a mile.
Okay.
It's a federal rate, and I think it just increased. It might be like 61 cents a mile. We just do 60 cents a mile. And it's a pretty standard practice in commercial design. So we just, we borrowed that as well. We also, in terms of drive time, we do not charge for our drive time unless it's over 30 minutes or 20 miles in one direction. So
it would just be the miles in that case. It would not be miles plus staff time.
Yeah. And you guys have to realize this is wear and tear on your own personal vehicles when you're driving around on behalf of your clients. So it just makes sense for you to get reimbursed for that. And you might not think, 60 cents a mile, it's not that much, but we'll sometimes run our reports, which we can export in Harvest, and there's, we drove 100 miles on behalf of this client this month. That's $60 that we've got back, to contribute towards the wear and tear on our vehicles.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Let's see. Can you explain the difference with design concept and design development?
You guys have such fun questions. You don't talk about math?
I know, right?
Yeah. Concept design is the first phase of the project where you're gathering information from your client, additional information after the consultation. So you would kick this off after you have given your client their proposal, they've signed their contract, and you've gotten your retainer money. Now the party can start. So now concept design, I say, includes these four elements. Let's see. element number one is your initial floor plan ideas. So whether it's like, a kitchen, maybe we'll do a massing diagram. If it's a furniture layout, we have standard furniture sizes we'll put in there, and we'll kind of come up with a couple of arrangements that might make sense. If we're doing a renovation and we're moving walls, we'll do some of those initial drawings to figure out how we want to reallocate the space, right? So just an initial pass at space planning. Some general dimensions, it's not super detailed. So floor plans, a mood board, different than a room board. A mood board is going to be that those kind of moody photos and imagery and graphics and color palette, maybe some words to capture the essence of your project and the vibe that you're going for. Preliminary budget. So you already have likely had a couple of conversations with your client about budget and where they want to be. This is where you'll itemize all the things in the wish list, and then you'll assign a budget to it. I like to do kind of a mid to high, or like a low and a high range. So we'll share that. These are not final numbers, by the way. It's just like, hey, are we tracking here, right? Or we're not off base here. Is there anything that we might need to reevaluate? Maybe things are going to be more expensive than we thought. So are you going to cut it from the project, or are you going to dig in your pockets a little deeper and pay what it takes to get you there?
Yeah.
Different scenarios. What is the other thing? Oh, a project narrative. So just saying, hey, this is what we want to do. So those are the elements of concept design. And then design development is just taking all that information. Once your client has bought into it, you start doing your specifications, finalizing all your furniture placements, and making sure your space planning is all correct. You're detailing your drawings. You've refined the budget. And then you're putting together your room boards. So the specific faucet and sink and tile or whatever all put together in a board. It's different than your mood board, which is kind of ethereal. This is more specific. So then you present all of that, and that is design development. I feel like I went real deep on that.
That was great.
That makes sense.
Yes, that makes perfect sense. So we are pretty much, we've covered a lot of amazing, super, super detailed math. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback on, the resources and the steps. I love how the slides are color coded. So, definitely go back to the replay, click around, do these calculations. The free PDF, has been dropped in the link. I will drop it in there one more time. Maybe Kate, just to wrap up, you might want to just remind us or explain to us what is in that PDF.
Yeah, absolutely. Then I do have just one last final thought. So the PDF is going to give you the formulas. It's going to give you the definitions of each of those numbers, so that you know what number you need to get, and then how to put them together. And then you can just use a Google sheet to kind of do that math for you, and keep tabs on each project that way. So that's what's in there. You guys, do not hesitate to email us if you have any questions about this, or you need some clarification. We're here for you as well. Support@designersoasis.com is probably the best way. I was just going to say, just to remind you guys, that I'm not a math whiz. I don't have an MBA. We can figure this out together. But I've worked with so many designers that they're like, hey, I don't have it in me. I don't have the I don't do math. Right. Well, guess what? If you're a business owner, you need to do math. And this isn't super complicated math. I promise you can do this. They're like, I just don't have it in me. Well, it's not fun, right? That's what I've heard. And I'm like, you want to know what isn't fun? What isn't fun is busting your tail all the time because you never have enough money at the end of the day to cover your business expenses, or, causing yourself to burn out because you don't know your numbers, or to not have enough money to treat your employees, to go out for dinner or happy hours sometime, or to be able to pay to take a course or business, learn a new skill. That's not fun, and that's not sustainable. So if that feels like you, and I had a math teacher one time told me, you'll never be good at math. And I was like, That's okay. I know how to use a calculator.
Yeah.
It's like, fine, I'll still figure it out. But you don't have to be doing this kind of stuff every day. Do it once a quarter, sit down, figure it out, get a cup of coffee, whatever it is that like makes you
Yes.
feel good.
Yeah.
And then go treat yourself to a massage afterwards or whatever the case may be. But the alternative is not good. The cost of not doing this work can be detrimental to your business. So I really want to encourage you guys to just don't overthink it. Just get started and get going. And I promise it's a lot easier than you might think.
Love it. Overall vibe I'm getting, support yourself, make it fun, support your team. There's a lot of like positive transformation in this math. So many takeaways. Kate, thank you so much for your time. Thank you everybody for watching, and we will see you on the next live. Bye everybody.
Thank you.